Gary Hickman is here with us today. How are you doing?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great today, yes. Now, first of all, you've got a book out at the moment called The Light Reapers, End of the World. So can you just describe to us, first of all, what the basic idea of the book is?
So it's a military zombie book. Not zombies in the traditional sense of, either the shamblers or it's not even the I guess you call it what is the super zombie of like World War Z. They're more like infected, so they do have some basic concepts. They can you have basic communication. And so the Light Reapers are a team of special ops, and there's a virus created by a group of terrorists, and the virus is stolen by an ISIS faction, who prematurely releases it, and then so the Light Reapers are sent to have to deal with the ISIS faction, grab the virus, and they're also tasked with trying to reach this scientist who might be able to create a vaccine or an antidote. Yeah. So they have to do this while also dealing with all the infected and everything like that. So
yeah. And has the idea of a virus been inspired by the events of this last year in any way?
It has, and that's what. And so it was kind of a I don't know, fine line as to not, I don't know, what do you call it, exploit the pandemic, and I wanted to make sure that people didn't think I was kind of, I don't know, not making fun of it, but trying to, I don't know what you call it, exploit it and something like that. So even with the thinking about releasing the book, I had to really kind of think about whether or not that would be taken, I guess, wrong. But we went ahead and so actually, what I did is I actually self-published with Amazon, and it was actually out there for a little bit until Black Rose Publishing saw the book, and they decided to re-release it. Yeah. And so I pulled all the previous the copies and everything else. So actually the re-release, or I guess the relaunch, will be actually August 12th. So it's actually in a couple weeks.
Yeah. And what is it specifically about the book that you think people might not have appreciated during these times?
I don't know. I mean, because obviously during the pandemic, people were dying, and especially over here in the U.S., they had a lot of problems with like nursing homes and people dying. A lot more people were dying in the nursing homes because of COVID than before, and I just didn't want people to think I was trying to profit or off of the pandemic, and then off of people's kind of sorrow and their tough times, especially if they've lost a loved one during the time. So I was very sensitive about that.
Yeah, and I guess that makes complete sense. And the idea of the virus being released and didn't come about naturally, was that inspired by certain theories that people seem to have had this year as well?
So it has this underlying conspiracy theory, if you will. Yeah. In the book, I don't actually come out and say it, but it alludes to it that that it was created for maybe a specific purpose. Yeah. And then conspiracy theory of these terrorists were going to release it, but this ISIS faction, who's kind of like in real life, ISIS is kind of a rogue, even a rogue group among the terrorists. So they try to release it as they wanted to, but things happened and it gets released before they actually wanted to. So
yeah, and I guess it's an interesting idea. I suppose even a couple years ago, would you have ever thought that you were going to write a book about a virus?
No, I actually had thought that the ideas were actually in a different direction. And it wasn't until the pandemic, and I was thinking about how I was going to I guess, create these creatures, zombies, or I call them infected in the book. And it wasn't until the kind of pandemic happened, and then that kind of changed my my storyline as far as how people were infected and all that stuff. So so it actually had a big influence on the book.
And the idea of a kind of zombie virus thing, is that more interesting to write about than the sort of general you get infected and you are a bit ill and die?
Yeah, because with like zombies, you can even take it as far as you want. And with the infected here, not only do they can move at normal speed where they kind of can think, but even in the book, it's not so much about. So some of them want to infect, some of them just want to kill, but they kill in kind of a ritualistic fashion. So the book is very gory. And it's pretty intense on the violence. So.
And was it quite fun to write this book?
Yeah, it was. So the thing about the book is that I was in the military for a while, and then I became paramilitary out. And so the book, there's quite a few of the scenarios, the tactics, and the interactions between the characters that are actually happened in real life. Wow. Obviously, I wasn't fighting zombies. I pulled the enemy out and inserted the zombies. I changed the names and the places, but some of the characters in here are real. Some of the tactics are real. Some of the scenarios in the book are real that I've actually experienced and actually went through. And so it was actually fun kind of reminiscing and kind of doing that, and that's what made the book actually kind of flow as far as me writing it, because it was real life situations.
And I guess it's great to have a lot of military experience to help you know what you're writing about, I guess.
It is, and you look at some of the previous. So if you go on like Amazon and some of the other ones where I had, or I guess Amazon where I pre-published or self-published, there's reviews from the first book, and there are quite a few reviews where people that did read it say, that it was accurate as far as, that this person was definitely prior military, because you could tell by the story and how he, sets it up and so forth and so on. So, yeah.
And have you ever read a book about the military that the author clearly doesn't know what they're talking about?
Yeah. I can kind of be a little annoyed. It comes to like books, even movies. There's some movies I can't watch because I'm just like, oh my gosh. But yeah, there's plenty of books I've read where obviously the person has no idea what they're talking about and stuff. So
that's an interesting thing. I suppose people probably try their hardest. They can do all sorts of research, but if they don't have the experience, perhaps it's never gonna be as good as it can be. But maybe they should get some sort of expert to proofread it. I don't know.
It might help. I mean, there's definitely. I mean, probably for the regular civilian, it may not be that glaring, but somebody who's been in the military or something, you can see that there's some certain lacking. Even some of the lingo they use that they might have heard or whatever. So it's just like that wouldn't fall into place as they put it. So
And has the coronavirus restrictions of staying at home this last year helped you have a little bit more time to write the book?
It definitely helped. Because I've started to write a book for years, and I don't know, just fizzled out, or I mean, there's a million excuses you can make for not writing a book. And it finally came down to the virus, where I actually had a little bit of time at home, where I was going nuts. It was driving me nuts not being at work, because you just have this feeling I should be somewhere. So to channel that, I started writing it, and I had the time, and it flowed, and then it just came, and I actually wrote it in about 7-8 months. Not including the editing and stuff, just the writing.
Yeah, and I take it you wanted to spend a lot of time perfecting it then, spending all those months, making sure it was absolutely as good as it could be.
That became a little bit of a problem because as you go back and then you say, oh, okay, I can make this better and make this better, and or maybe I make this a little more clear, and you can just beat yourself to death with trying to come up with the perfect book, and eventually you just got to like say, you know what, it's good. We just we need to crank it out and let the audience decide, the readers decide, I guess.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing because I think at the start of this pandemic, a lot of people said they were going to use the time to write a book, but I think when lockdowns happened, people were just sort of overwhelmed by it and just decided to sit and watch TV all day. So did you have anything that you did to make you actually want to do it, or were you already into writing and naturally did it anyway?
I write quite a bit. And it started way back when I got into a little bit of trouble and jail. I got in trouble with some the system and jail and stuff, and so I had to go to what they called court-appointed anger management, and part of that was you had to keep a journal. That was part of your requirements to get through this course, and so that's kind of where it started. I didn't really know it, but you had to write your feelings, all your feelings down, as dark as they were. And that's where it kind of started. And the counselor was like, well, you're writing, it's almost like poetry. And I'm like, okay, whatever. And so that was probably when I was like 17, and then just progressed from there. And I finally decided to write the book. So I will say this real quick. So one of the problems I think with writing a book is a lot of people think of the book itself. And when they think of the task of writing a whole book, it's completely overwhelming.
Yeah.
And so, I think what I basically did a basic story outline, just, some of the major events. And then I just concentrated on writing that first chapter. And once you get that first chapter, you can decide where it goes from there. And I think once you just get that first chapter done, that kind of breaks the ice and kind of gets you motivated to do the rest of it. So,
yeah. For sure. And do you think that you will have more books on the way, perhaps a sequel, or just any other independent books that you're thinking of writing, or perhaps already are?
So I am probably 75% done with the sequel to the book. When I self-published, I left it at a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
And the readers were, they loved the book, but they were a little upset. Because it was like a cliffhanger. So when the publisher kind of the publisher was like, that was a little too much of a cliffhanger. So we need to kind of, it's better for the readers if you kind of get to a place where they can accept, the end of the book. So for this release, I added a lot of additional content. In the book itself, and then I added probably the first 6 chapters of the sequel added to this book, so you could at least have a little bit of closure as to some of what was going on. But people were a little upset but as far as that, so I'm doing a sequel, and I got a couple other ideas that I'm working on, maybe taking a break after the second book, doing some other stories, and then maybe coming back. I kind of want to continue on with the Light Reapers as far as, I don't know, as a series.
Yeah. Well, where are we able to check out this book and all the others that you've released in the past as well?
So you can get these on everywhere. Amazon, Books A Million, Barnes and Noble, I think Target, Walmart, anywhere online. There's even a couple of, which I don't have, I should have had. There's even a couple of bookstores from the UK that you can pre-order and be able to order on August 12th. Because I have found out that the UK is really receptive to this kind of genre. And I've gotten quite a few reviews and emails from readers in the UK. So I really want to make sure that we could get into that market and have it available in the UK, because there's a lot of passionate people UK that like this genre. So it was really kind of refreshing, because they were a little bit more passionate about it than maybe some of the people here in the US.
Yeah,
So.
I wonder why that is. That's really weird. Anyway, thank you for coming on the show today, and have a great rest of your day.
Yes, sir. I appreciate you having me.